And I was born on the 25th of April, 1919. And this is a picture of the little shanty house where I was born. And my mom and dad moved there when they were first married. And my mom always wanted a new house. But guess what? My dad got a new barn and a new granary first. I was born of goodly parents. I have a picture of them right here. That's my mom and dad that were married on the 1st of July, 1914. And they had their first child in April the 3rd, 1915, a boy, my brother Art. He was named after my dad, whose name was Arthur Cecil Hadley. Art's name was Arthur Russell Hadley, named after my mother's surname, which was Russell. Her name was Odessa Russell. 4 years later, I was born, and I was named after a missionary whom my mother knew when she was going to church in Portage-la-Prairie. And that's where she met my dad, at church. It was a good place to meet. Never did have a sister. I just had two brothers, one 4 years older and one 4 years younger. And so I always felt like I was an only child but I did have a cousin across the road who I played with, and so that was good to have him. We had always had to make do with what we had on the farm, of course, and in the summertime they always grew raspberries and strawberries and things like that in a big garden, and when we wanted to make jelly or jam or marmalade or something, we had to go to the bush where they grew wild. And so one day my mom asked me if I would go with her to pick cranberries. And it was about over a half a mile, I remember, I know. And she took a milk pail with her. Well, when we got there, the fruit was so loaded down on the bushes that she couldn't quit picking them. She was thinking of the next winter, I think. She wanted to provide for her family. And so when the bucket was full, she said, "Louise, you take off those pantaloons and then I'm going to fill them with cranberries." So I had to take off my pantaloons, tied up the legs, and filled those pantaloons with cranberries and took them home, and she made the most wonderful marmalade. I can see it, I can taste it. And it was about the color of what we call cranberry now. Wonderful stuff. I can remember little things about growing up there. We were what we called pretty poor. I didn't know we were poor because I always had enough to eat and enough to wear, and always had a good time. My mom and dad always took me to the card whist drives and to the dances. In fact, here's a picture of my mom and me, and she had made me this lovely dress. It was wine-colored, and she covered the buttons and everything. And I was 14 years old in this picture. And they had a hard time dance at the school. And most people think, you know, if you're hard up, you should go around with holes in your pants and ragged sleeves and stuff. Well, growing up, I can remember that she always saved all the sugar sacks and the flour sacks and bleached them all out and made tea towels, and she made my underwear. And this day, she had made this lovely dress, and she bleached it all and then dyed it a beautiful rose color and wore it to the dance. And one of the judges met her on the stairs at the schoolhouse where we always had the dances, and he said, "I hear that you made your dress." She said, "Yes, I did." And he didn't say any more, but when they gave out the prizes, my mother got first prize because she said, "Even though you're poor, you don't have to look untidy." This is a picture of Elder Henson. He invited me to come to a cottage meeting, and he gave me my first Book of Mormon. which I don't have anymore because Dad was so excited about giving away Books of Mormon that he gave it away. And I was kind of disappointed about that, but that was okay, as long as somebody got it that read it. My cousin John, his dad was my mom's brother. And when I was, I guess it was just before I was born, they had this bad flu that came along in after the war, about 1918 or 19, and his dad died from the flu, and they also had a little boy, 2-year-old boy, who died 2 days later, and they were both buried in the same coffin. And she was pregnant with John at the time, and so that was the only boy she had left. When she had him, my mom said she came out to our place and she just cried all summer. It was kind of sad. And then when the war came along in the 1940s, he joined up and got his gunner wings, and he made 7 sorties over Germany. And the last one, the plane was shot so badly that it crashed into the North Sea, and none of them were ever found. And my aunt had a bad stroke after that, and she never spoke a word again for 27 years. She lived 27 years after that and never spoke. I had started to go to night school to be a stenographer, secretary or something, and he said, I'll give you the money and I want you to go to a day school. So I went to day school for 3 months, and the lady in charge sent me out to work after 3 months of school, which wasn't very smart, I don't think, because I didn't have my shorthand up as well as it should have been. But I got along okay, and they said I would be a good secretary, but something happened along the way. I met somebody. Well, I tell you, he was posted to McDonald after he had been to Manning Depot, as he called it, in Edmonton. He was posted to McDonald, and the airmen didn't have much to do in that little place, and so the powers that be used to have dances and things for the airmen to come to, and then they would invite the girls in town to go to these dances to dance with the airmen, to entertain them, I guess. And so I was asked to go to this dance at the arena in Portage-la-Prairie, and they had a wonderful orchestra. Dima Leslie had a wonderful orchestra, played everything like that. And this guy came along and asked me for a dance, and he had this whole string of tickets in his hand. And he was a good dancer, and I was a good dancer. Everybody told me I was anyway. Jitney dance is when they pay 10 cents a ticket to dance. And so I guess, I don't know whether he bought $1 worth of tickets or what, but he had a string of them anyway. And he asked me to dance every dance. I think he danced maybe one other one. The thing that impressed me was how he whistled in my ear. I've never heard anyone who could whistle like he could. It was, well, I've never heard a bird even be able to whistle like that. I can't do it, and I don't think anybody ever could, but it was an amazing way that he had this trill to his whistle. And we enjoyed each other's company, and he asked if he could walk me home, and that did it. We just, he just was in town every time he got a chance. He would come in on the bus, or he would hitchhike in with somebody, and we always ended up together. I can remember Dad and I used to go out. Jack and Ruth were married. They got married when she was 18 and he was 19, and her mom and dad lived on the farm. And when Fred was courting me, we went out there one weekend, and they only had one bed, a big bed. And so Ruth and Jack slept in the middle, and I slept beside Ruth, and Jack slept beside, or Fred slept beside Jack on the other side of the bed. Well, we got laughing and carrying on like people do, you know. And Fred used to have a saying, if things were going well, he'd say, well, that's cooking with gas, you know. That was supposed to have been you're doing okay. But instead of saying that's cooking with gas, he said, oh, that's gassing with cook. And everybody started to laugh. They thought that was so funny. And it was so funny that Fred fell out of bed. He laughed so hard. There wasn't much room to stay in bed. But that was a funny thing that we remembered from being there. And I remember when when my aunt got word that my cousin John was missing in action, we went out to their place at High Bluff, and Fred sat at my feet. We were sort of secluded in the den, I guess it was, and I was sitting on a chair, and he sat at my feet and looked up at me, and he says, will you marry me? My heart melted right there. And I said yes, and that was Christmas. And I got a diamond for Christmas, and on the 1st of June, I got the wedding ring. We got married. And this was taken in front of his dad's mom's place in Vancouver in Central Park, and this is my going away outfit. I remember I had it tailored by a tailor, handmade, that coat, and I think it cost me $22 at the time. That was a fortune, because I never made much more than that when I was working. Oh, and here comes somebody with the wedding picture. This should have come. This is putting the cart before the horse, but that's okay. And most of you will probably have seen this picture, or maybe in years to come you'll look at it and say, well, there's my great-great-grandmother and my great-great-grandfather, and have fun. This is a picture of my wedding cake, and Fred and I made our own wedding cake. We mixed up all the fruit and everything and cut it at the wedding. We were married in Winnipeg, and we went to it was a house which catered to weddings. It was very nice. It was a big, big house, and we catered to weddings. And I can remember a part of the dinner. I know we had a wonderful dinner. We had a tomato soup course, and we had a turkey and all the trimmings course, and we had pie for dessert, and then we had this wedding cake. And we cut the wedding cake, and we had to catch a train for Vancouver. That's where we were going on our honeymoon. And we didn't have much time, so I had to leave to go to change. And one of the fellows who was at the wedding said to Fred, he said, I guess you're kind of worried about, or you don't have to worry about dressing. That's what he said, because Fred had his uniform on. And Fred said, well, I'm not worried about the dressing. He said, it's the undressing I'm worried about. I thought that was pretty funny. When we first got married, we lived, of course, in Portage-la-Prairie, and then Fred got transferred out to Sea Island, BC.